Welcome to the Steregushchy-class Corvette ship brief. This is one of the modern patrol boats that are coming out of Russia these days. This is Project 20380 and the modernized 20381, and we'll talk about those differences. So some sources, and I believe NATO is one of them, calls this a frigate because of an extended range surface-to-air missile mod in the modernization gives it frigate-like capabilities. This is primarily a submarine hunter. It's meant to replace the Grisha class of submarine hunters, of which Russia still operates, I believe, just a little over 20 now, which were designated coastal patrol vessels. And those were very effective in shallow water for what they did. And so this is one of the three classes that will be replacing the Grisha. So it does have a modern design, has a low cross-section for radar detectability. They have 9 in service at time of this recording. 3 are still under construction for a total of 12. Now, they do have some serious anti-ship capability with 8 KH-35 anti-ship missiles. They have a large A190 naval gun on the bow, and the Cashtan close-in weapon system right behind that. In this photo you're looking at, the Cashtan has been replaced with a VLS system that shoots 12 redoubt surface-to-air missiles. And when they extended the range of the surface-to-air missile with the modernization of that weapon, this class was reclassified by some countries as being a frigate because it can provide air defense as well as be a picket ship for a fleet and has a strong anti-submarine warfare role. So traditionally, frigates on the outside of a fleet would perform those roles. But know that Russia calls this a corvette, and what we're doing here at Subbrief is the country that operates the ship. Whatever classification they choose is the one we're going to go with. So this is the Steregushchy-class Corvette ship brief. Let's get started. Let's take a look at the weapons here. On the bow is that A190 100mm gun on a Corvette. This is a very large caliber weapon for such a small ship. So this is going to be its primary ballistic weapon in any kind of fight. Right behind that is the Cashtan modernized close-in weapon system. This was only on the original batch of ships, and I could only find photo evidence of it on Hull 1. However, it is likely to also be on Hull 2. But all the hulls after that appear to have the VLS installed. That we'll talk about. Amidships, between the two stacks or radio towers, masts if you will, is a open area that you can't see from the waterline where the anti-ship missile launchers are pointing. They're quadruple launchers, 4 facing port, 4 facing starboard, and that is its primary anti-ship punch. It does have AK-630 modernized close-in weapon systems, port and starboard. Those are the rotary cannons that shoot thousands of rounds a minute in a point defense role against cruise missile attack. There's also a Packet NK anti-submarine warfare system that is also used as a torpedo, anti-torpedo system. Here is the redoubt VLS launcher on the bow. This is a great photo here. Here you can see the 12 different cells. Those heavy metal doors, pivot up, and there's one launcher beneath each one of those. And it does a cold launch, which means that it pneumatically ejects with air the missile up into the air. It then rotates using little pivot jets in the direction of the threat. Then the main rocket motor ignites, as it's in the air. This all happens within like 1 or 2 seconds. And then it races towards the target. It's quite an interesting launch. Cold launch missiles are very modern looking and pretty cool to watch. And Russia has fully embraced the cold launch missile. Here are the sensors. Right above the bridge, we have the EP-10E fire control radar. On the bow, of course, is the Zarya bow-mounted sonar system. That works with the Packet ENK anti-torpedo system. Technically 2 different systems, but they're working together. The tall mast in the very center of the ship has the Fruk 2 radar, and below that is the Monument A multifunction radar. And these NATO names like Monument literally come from how they appear whenever they're first deployed. So the first time Naval Intelligence saw this radar, it looked like a monument. So that's how it gets its nickname, if you will, or its system name. Of course, the Russians call it something entirely different. And then port and starboard of the main mast is the ECM and ESM suite. That's for electronic countermeasures and electronic support measures. So the support measures are looking at radars and what else is happening out there, radio communications, data links, things like that. And then the ECM is trying to disrupt those detections. So if there's a search radar out there, it will do what it needs to obscure the location of the ship or completely hide it, mask it, if you will. There's all sorts of different capabilities with these modern ECM suites. But just know the difference, this is important, between ECM and ESM. Even though they're part of the same system or suite, they have very different roles. ECM is countermeasures, protecting the ship. ESM is a support measure, surveilling all the radio communications and radars out there. Here's a list of the ships that are being built. The first keel was laid down, Hull 1, 2001, and they're still building them today at the Amick shipyard. That's the Pacific shipyard over there, just south of Vladivostok, upriver a little bit. And those are all being constructed. Now, something to note about the Grozny and the Bravi that are under construction right now, word is that their mast configuration is a little bit different than the other ships in this class. So the first 10 look like what we just saw. These last 2 that are not finished yet apparently have a different mast configuration. So whenever those are finally commissioned and they come out, we'll have photos for you on the Patreon to take a look at that. That could be a couple of years, though, before that happens. All right, so here's the Steregushchy-class Corvette by the numbers. It's a combined diesel and diesel propulsion, so lots of diesel engines working together, code DAD. It is 104 meters long and displaces 2,200 tons fully loaded, and can make a top speed of 27 knots. At its optimal speed, it can go as far as 3,800 nautical miles. It can refuel at sea. And it has 15 days of endurance on board. And what that means basically is food for the crew, because they make their own water and they can get fueled at sea. So as long as you keep feeding them food, that 15 days would reset, with like helicopter food drops and supply drops. Below that, we have the 330 millimeter lightweight torpedo tubes. Those are the anti-torpedo torpedoes, but they can also be used against submarines. They have a relatively short range of something like 800 meters, very short range, but they're designed to go out and intercept incoming weapons. I'm a little skeptical about this because Russia's not provided any convincing evidence that the system works. The system does exist. We know that. They have used it in war games, so it launches the torpedoes. But we have no evidence that there's ever been a torpedo intercept. It might work. They just have not shown video or anything convincing at all that it actually does what it claims to do. It's very difficult to shoot a torpedo with a torpedo. And so if they can do that, that's a huge step forward for the Russian Navy. I remain skeptical. The A190 100 millimeter naval gun is the big gun on the bow. Rapid fire, large caliber, will tear a ship apart. It has 2 of the AK-630 Gatling gun style close-in weapon systems, one port, one starboard. The Cashtan, modernized Sea Whiz, is on the bow of Hull 1, probably Hull 2. The rest of them have the 12 VLS cells, shooting the 9M96E2 air defense missile. And we're going to break that down for you. Just know there's multiple versions of that very popular missile. Let's go talk about radars. The FERC-2 is the primary search radar, long-range air surface search. The Monument A multifunction radar mast is actually a phased array. Very modern, again, very accurate radar system. ECM, ESM is the TK25 Echo version. The 5P10E fire control radar controls that large gun on the bow, the 100 millimeter gun. They have two SP520Ms, electro-optical and infrared surveillance detectors. Those are just optical detectors that can track objects within visual range, and then they have different modes like infrared, low light capability, and they track images by shape. It's very interesting how it works, and so it can passively track a target that is within line of sight of the sensor, which is mounted above the bridge. So it can see a little bit farther than people standing in the bridge would be able to see. The Zarya 2 bow sonar, very good low frequency active passive sonar. Does have a towed array, and of course has the Packet E anti-torpedo system that can detect submarines. That system only has a range of about 10,000 yards, I believe it is. But the Zarya 2 has much longer range. But keep in mind, this ship is designed to operate in littoral waters. It is a Corvette. This is not a deep water ocean going vessel, although it has operated in blue water. That's not its element. It has the 3R6U fire control system combines all of these systems together. That's a very important system that doesn't get much attention because it's not a weapon system and it's not a fancy radar, but none of these systems would work together without the 3R60U fire control system. And you can operate a KA-27 Helix helicopter. You can refuel it. You can put weapons on it from the back of this ship. Here is the Colmena 16D49. And let me tell you about this diesel engine. This diesel engine, short name for it is D49, has been around since before I was even in the Navy. Of course, they have modernized it and made small changes, but this thing is so reliable that the core design has been around forever. It's a 16-cylinder, 100 to 1300 RPM range. They turn this thing on and it just generates power and propulsion for the ship. It's very good. I remember as a sonarman going through sonar schools that we had to memorize not just the RPMs, but like the oil pump reduction ratio on the side of these things. Lots of different ways to classify this thing just by listening to it. And I'm sure now that's all probably on some sonarman's iPad. But back in the day, we had to actually memorize through rote memorization, writing it down, reciting it, and we were tested. Yeah, we were tested on what is the reduction ratio, and then we would have to go into the lab and listen to a recording and calculate the RPM, calculate this other line that was the oil pump, figure out the reduction ratio, and classify it as a 16D49 based on that information. So we had to do both. We had to have the book knowledge and we had to have the practical knowledge. So I'm very familiar with this engine. That's what I'm saying. All right, here's the FERC 2 radar. This thing is, it's pretty good, I'll be honest with you guys. It's 3D volumetric air search radar, operates between 2 and 3 gigahertz, can track 200 some targets. It has an instrumented range of almost 60 miles, pretty good accuracy, and it does mechanically rotate inside that dome. That dome is just a protection for it. It does spin inside that at 30 RPM per minute. And I IOC'd in 2007 for the entire Russian Navy. Okay, here's the Monument A radar. This thing is the phased array radar that has multiple panels going around it. Again, operating in the S-band, which is 2 to 3 gigahertz. It's 3D active phased array associated with providing fire control data link to the missiles for mid-course correction, mid-flight, whether it's the Redoubt or the 3M100 missile system. And can track 200 targets and shoot 4 of them at a time. Here's the 5P10E fire control radar. This again is for the main gun on the bow. It's a 3D fire control radar, operates in the 8 to 10 gigahertz range. Can track up to 8 targets, but with one gun, with one barrel, it shoots 1 at a time. It can actually see the shell in flight too. That's an important note, is that it can correct its fire based on the previous shot. So yeah, it's going to calculate wind and everything else that gets calculated, but then it's going to look at the actual shell and be like, okay, even though my calculations say X, impact zone is actually XY, and it's going to make adjustments automatically. It's pretty good. You don't want to be within range of this weapon, which is about 16 nautical miles ballistically. The radar, I should mention, goes out to 32 nautical miles. We'll talk about the gun here in a second. Here's the TK25 Echo Electronic Warfare Suite. Different types of looks to this thing, but as you can see, the picture on the bottom is the actual ship there. That's what you would expect to see there. It's Electronic Warfare Suite. They don't really talk in any detail about it other than it operates in WX and KU bands. The surveillance mode can observe everything from the P band to the KU bands. And bearing accuracy is 4 degrees for low frequency, 2 degrees for high frequency. Honestly, you don't need more than that. If you had more than that, that's great, but you don't need it. Can track 128 different emitters at a time with 360 degrees coverage. IOC'd in 2003. Here's the AK-630M Sea Whiz. This thing might be in every Russian subbrief we ever did, or ship brief. Manufactured by Tula Mascovoid, or JSC. This is an upgraded version or modernized version of the AK-630 close-in weapon system. This thing shoots 5,000 rounds a minute. It has 2,000 rounds in the little turret magazine itself, and it can obviously reload at sea. The max range is 5 kilometers. This thing would be pretty devastating, I would think, against unmanned surface vessels, little drones coming at you, whether it's in the Black Sea or anywhere else. This thing has look down, shoot down capability down to a negative 12 degrees look down. So until the drone gets right on top of the ship, it will be within the engagement envelope of this weapon. And this thing, I see it all the way back in 1976. That's before the modernization, of course. All right, here's the Cashtan modernized close-in weapon system. This thing is imposing to look at because it has short-range surface-to-air missiles combined with 2 menacing-looking Gatling guns, something out of a Terminator movie, all controlled by multiple sensors. It has electrical optical sensors. It has radar sensors. Anything that is coming at this ship and is within, say, 10 kilometers is going to be tracked and it's going to be engaged. And there's a high volume of fire coming out of these Gatling guns. And the missiles obviously have a longer range than the ballistic weapons do. So the order of battle would be to engage with the 9M311 surface-to-air missiles, which are self-homing. And if that doesn't take out the threat, then the ballistic missiles will just spew rounds in the direction of the threat until it's gone. Very, very effective. Here's the A190 100 millimeter naval gun, manufactured by JSC. And this is the upgraded dual-purpose gun. Dual-purpose means it can also shoot a flak-like round against air targets, whether it's an airplane or a cruise missile. Has a rate of fire of 80 rounds per minute. When you're shooting a 100 millimeter round at more than 1 per second, that's very impressive. It also generates a lot of heat, which is why this thing is water-cooled. That's what that hose is right there. Cooling the barrel so it can fire more than 10 rounds before it gets too hot. The range for the aircraft round is about 8 kilometers. Surface targets, it can reach all the way out to 21 kilometers. And 80 rounds are stored on board. So it has 1 minute of fire. And after that, it's got to pull into port to get more shells from the pier. Yep. IOC'd in the late 1990s. All right, the Redoubt air defense system. There's a lot of good press about this. This is one of Russia's surface-to-air missiles that works pretty well. It's associated with the S-350 air defense system, but this is for naval platforms. So it's between the S-300 and S-400. They carry 12 in a 12 VLS system on the bow. It's only on the newer Stereguchies, but I've seen it on all the new hulls. The only one that doesn't have this that I've seen is Hull 1, and I believe Hull 2 still has the old Cashtan. However, I was unable to verify that for you. So just know that, generally speaking, the newer Stereguchies have the VLS system. And it's just the original batch that has the old ballistic one. This is used for self-defense. Has a range of 60 kilometers, about 37 miles maximum. And it can shoot down, well, engage a ballistic target. That's not necessarily a ballistic missile. Let's just say a ballistic target out to 30 kilometers. That's because of an altitude restriction right there. You can see the altitude is 25,000 meters, which is still very high. But it can reach up there and get a ballistic trajectory target. This I'll see it in 2010. All right, so here's that missile I was telling you about. This is the 9M96E2 surface-to-air missile. NATO name is the SAN. SAX would be experimental. SAN would be the naval variant. SAN-28. It's the upgraded version of the 9M96 that's used on the S-400 and S-350 systems. This is launched from the Redoubt VLS system on the bow. It has an active RF seeker. It gets mid-course updates from the ship as well. And, of course, it has its own INS guidance. Every missile is going to have INS guidance. If it loses data link, it's got to keep going towards a target. So that's what the INS is going to keep the missile flying straight towards where it thinks it's supposed to go. But just know that this thing is updated as it's flying. Rapidly, often per second. It has a 24-gram high explosive fragmentation warhead, which is more than enough to damage an aircraft or a cruise missile to the point to where it's not going to be functional anymore. The max range of the extended range missile is claimed to be 120 kilometers, which is extremely long for this very small missile. So the way the Russians came to that claim was they shot the weapon at its most optimal trajectory under ideal conditions, and the warhead, after the rocket motor burns out, was able to travel that distance before splash. And so you would not engage a target at that range and expect to get a hit. But that is the actual maximum range of all the energy that's in this rocket and missile. This I will see it in 2015. It's still a very good missile. Just understand the Russians are really pushing their numbers here with some creative conditions. Okay, here's the KH-35 anti-ship missile. This is the SSN-25 Switchblade. It has a turbojet engine with a solid rocket booster, very harpoonish in terms of performance. Max speed is 0.9 Mach, so it's subsonic. Max range is 130 kilometers. It's more than enough for a Corvette. We have to remind ourselves that this is a littoral water primarily operating ship looking for submarines, but it does have this anti-ship capability, and it has 8 of these. So that's no joke. If it shoots 4 and then another wave of 4, you're going to have a busy day on board your ship defending against this. Each warhead is 145 high explosive fragmentation or a shaped charge, which is much more likely. It does have GLONASS guidance, which is the GPS for the Russians, and of course internal navigation. It does have an RF seeker at the end. When it goes into terminal homing, it will turn on its radar and just look for a target and go after it. And of course, it is sea skimming at the final terminal phase, 4 meters above the water, it says here. But its transit phase is going to be a lot higher, 10 to 15 meters, which will make it a lot easier to detect. Compared to other modern anti-ship missiles, this one is not as much of a threat, but you would still want to, you don't want to get hit by it. All right, here's the Packet N ASW Complex. I love this thing because I love the idea of an anti-torpedo torpedo. The Americans, us, we've been trying to get this thing to work for a long time. And all of a sudden, it was in 2020, the Navy stopped doing updates. So I think we finally cracked the nut on the anti-torpedo torpedo here in the United States. And I believe we did that with the help of the Israelis because they cracked that nut around 2016. Russia claims to have an anti-torpedo torpedo as well as of 2019, because of course they wanted to get it 1 year before the Americans. However, unlike the Americans, the Israelis, and the Germans, the Russians have not shown evidence of this thing actually working, other than it does launch a torpedo into the water and it runs for 10 kilometers. The anti-torpedo effective range is only 800 meters, or about 874 yards. So you had better if a modern heavyweight torpedo is 800 meters away from you, you had better hit it, because it's going to hit you. If it doesn't run out of gas, that thing is going to hit your ship. Again, I have to go with what Russia's claiming here. This 50-knot weapon, it can be used against submarines, by the way, but it can also be used against a torpedo if it's within 800 meters of the ship. The anti-torpedo effective range, if it runs in a straight line, is 10 kilometers. So we'll see how that goes. I don't believe this works. And there's been no evidence that it actually does. But you should know the packet NK ASW Complex does exist, and it is on several ships, including this one, the Steregushchy class. All right, here's the Kov K25 helicopter. This is the Russian Navy helicopter. This is their, sea-based, ASW platform. It's multi-role, but it does primarily do ASW hunting. It has a surface search radar on it. It has dipping sonar, sonar buoys, magnetic anomaly detection, and electronic support measures as well. So you can send the helicopter out, over the horizon, outside the range of, say, your ESM that's on board your ship, and conduct a passive radar search, if you will. But it's capable of many things, including hunting and attacking submarines with its APR-2 lightweight torpedoes. Those can have nuclear warheads, and the depth bomb can have a nuclear warhead. Very unlikely it'll ever be deployed. But just know the K-27, I IOC'd all the way back in the 1980s. This thing's been around forever. And it replaced an older helicopter that looks similar, but wasn't nearly as capable, called the K-25, was that Hormone? Was NATO name. And they look funky. I love the double rotor above the fuselage, because that eliminates the need for a tail rotor. It's really clever. You got to give the Russians for that. They eliminated the need to have a tail rotor. I imagine this thing would be a lot easier to fly at speed, because you don't have that counter torque going on. But this is their primary anti-submarine warfare naval helicopter. All right, folks, that's it. Final thoughts here. Steregushchy class is a well-armed Corvette. It is a lightweight ship. What did we say? 2,200 tons fully loaded. It's got a 100-millimeter gun on the bow. It's got great point defense out to about, 60 kilometers. You could say 120 if you really wanted to stretch it out there, but long range. We'll say long range. And then it has great anti-ship punch as well. And if that anti-torpedo system works, good luck torpedoing it. So this has a lot of survivability built into it, including those AK-630 Gatling guns that could rip apart a unmanned surface vessel trying to attack it. So this very modern, great ship, long-range detection, long-range surface-to-air missiles, has a hard punch, and pretty impressed with what they put on it. If you compare this in terms of mission and displacement to the Independence class LCS, it's simply better than ours in terms of many things, including surface-to-air weapons. So they outdid the LCS with their Steregushchy class. And for that, I have to give Russia credit. Well done. It does have low observable features, as do most modern warships these days. And that readout air defense, it only has 12 missiles, but those 12 missiles are quite capable. This thing would be operating in pairs at a minimum. I highly doubt you'd see one of these by itself. But I have to say this, very impressed. Good job to the Russians making a capable Corvette that has a great punch, long-range surveillance capability, and possibly a anti-torpedo system that would keep it alive in a fight against a submarine. Its primary mission is anti-submarine warfare, and it has great anti-air warfare with that readout. And that's the Stereguchiy class, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a great one, everybody. Bye.